The notification arrives on a Tuesday at exactly 11:17 in the morning. You're standing in line at a grocery store holding a black basket with 6 items inside: coffee, eggs, bread, bananas, peanut butter, sparkling water. The woman in front of you is arguing with the cashier over a coupon worth $2.17. The cashier looks exhausted. The man behind you is scrolling through social media. A child near the entrance is begging his father for candy. Nobody in the building knows you're worth $1.3 billion. Not the cashier, not the father, not the woman with the coupon, not the teenager collecting shopping carts outside. And that's exactly how you want it. Your phone vibrates. You pull it out. The message is short. 3 words: funds have cleared. You stare at the screen. Then you read it again. And then one more time. Because even after years of negotiations, lawyers, meetings, spreadsheets, and signatures, part of your brain still refuses to believe it. The line moves forward. The cashier asks if you'd like a receipt. You nod. You pay. You walk outside. The automatic doors slide shut behind you. And the world keeps moving. That's the strange thing. You always imagined there would be a moment, a feeling, a dividing line between the old life and the new one, before and after. But there isn't. The traffic light changes from red to green. Someone honks their horn. A delivery truck backs into a loading zone. The sun feels exactly the same. You expected fireworks. Instead, you feel normal. And somehow that feels even stranger. Because 10 years earlier, there was absolutely nothing normal about your life. You grew up in a small house where money was treated carefully. Not feared. Not worshipped. Just respected. Your father worked 6 days a week. Your mother worked whenever extra hours were available. Nobody complained. But everyone understood the rules. The rules were invisible. You learned them by watching. Lights got turned off when nobody was in the room. Restaurant meals were reserved for birthdays. Vacations happened only when discounts appeared at exactly the right time. You learned early that financial stress rarely announces itself loudly. It exists in smaller ways, in delayed purchases, in postponed repairs, in conversations that suddenly stop when children walk into the room. By 16, you'd already noticed something. Some families seem to move through life differently, not because they worked harder. Your father worked harder than anyone you knew, not because they were smarter. Some of the smartest people you met struggled constantly. The difference seemed invisible, like there was information certain people had access to and everyone else didn't. That thought stayed with you. One evening, your father came home after being passed over for a promotion. Everyone expected him to get it. Even he expected it. Instead, the job went to someone with better connections. Your father didn't complain, didn't yell, didn't break anything. He simply sat down, ate dinner, and watched television. But something about the quietness of that moment stuck with you. Because for the first time, you realized effort alone wasn't enough. The world rewarded leverage, leverage of knowledge, leverage of relationships. That realization changed everything. While your friends were focused on the next weekend, you became obsessed with understanding how wealth was actually created. Not how it was spent, how it was created. You started reading books about businesses, watching interviews with founders, studying companies, following investors. Most teenagers dream about becoming rich. You became fascinated with the systems that produced wealth in the first place. And without realizing it, that curiosity became the foundation of everything that followed. At 22, you graduate. 3 months later, you're sitting in a cubicle. The company is fine. The salary is fine. Everything is fine. And that's the problem. Every evening after work, you begin studying. Marketing, sales, psychology, business, operations, negotiation. For 3 years, you lived 2 separate lives, the employee during the day, the student at night. Eventually, you notice a problem inside your industry, a small inefficiency, the kind of thing everyone complains about but nobody fixes. At 25, you make the decision. You quit your job. The business starts in the second bedroom of your apartment. There are no employees, no investors, no guarantees, just you and an idea. The first 6 months are brutal. Nobody responds. Nobody notices. Revenue doesn't arrive. For the first time, quitting seems reasonable. Then one Tuesday morning, an email arrives. A customer wants to buy. Not a huge customer, not a life-changing contract, but a real customer. The first customer becomes the second. The second becomes the fifth. The fifth becomes the 10th. Growth remains slow, but now it exists. Momentum has appeared. At 28, the company is finally growing. Customers are arriving without being chased. Referrals are becoming common. You hire your first employee. Then another. Then another. Revenue doubles. Then doubles again. The product solves a real problem. The business that started in a spare bedroom now occupies an entire office floor. Then one morning, everything changes. An acquisition conversation begins. A phone call. Then a meeting. Then another meeting. Weeks become months. The negotiations intensify. Lawyers become permanent fixtures in your calendar. Conference rooms become your second home. Then, one Thursday afternoon, someone slides a document across the table. The number is larger than anything you imagined. The deal isn't finished yet. But for the first time, you can see the finish line. The wire clears on a Tuesday. At 2:11 in the afternoon, your attorney sends 3 words. It has cleared. You stare at the message, then read it again. You set your phone down on the kitchen counter, walk to the sink, fill a glass with water, and stand there looking out the window. Across the street, a man is unloading groceries from his car. A woman walks her dog. Traffic moves through an intersection. Nothing looks different. The city doesn't know. The neighborhood doesn't know. The world doesn't know. $1 billion just entered your life. And absolutely nothing outside your window has changed. The first few weeks after the deal feel strange. For 10 years, every morning started with a problem to solve. Now the financial problem is gone. Completely. You travel. You stay in beautiful hotels. You fly first class. The excitement fades. Humans adapt. The luxury becomes normal. The money changed your circumstances. It didn't change your nature. Several months later, you visit your parents. You sit at the same kitchen table where you once worried about the future. Eventually, your father asks a simple question. Are you happy? The question follows you home. You realize happiness isn't the real goal. Meaning is. For years, meaning came from building. Now you need a new mission, a new purpose. That's when you understand something important. The $1 billion was never the reward. The journey was. The friendships, the lessons, the resilience, the person you became. Real wealth isn't measured by what you buy. It's measured by what you change, the opportunities you create, the doors you open, the lives you improve. At 16, you thought money was the goal. At 26, you thought building a company was the goal. At 35, you realized freedom was the goal. Freedom to choose, freedom to create, freedom to live intentionally. The money was never the thing that made you rich. The mindset did that long before the wire ever arrived. Because wealth is rarely built in dramatic moments. It's built in ordinary days, ordinary decisions, ordinary habits, repeated long enough to create extraordinary results. And sometimes the greatest return isn't the money. It's the person you become while earning it.